It's my understanding that these conversations start very promptly. So with that, I'm going to launch us. I want to say a warm hello to everyone in the United States, in Israel, and Palestine, and other places in the world who are joining us today. And I want to welcome you to this latest installment of Conversations with Israel and Palestine, which is hosted by Partners for Progressive Israel. Conversations with Israel and Palestine is a series of informational webinars that brings voices from Israel and Palestine to an American audience, and it provides an important link between progressives in the United States and in the Middle East. So my name is Rabbi Deborah Waxman, and I am the president of Reconstructing Judaism, the central organization of the Reconstructionist movement. And over the next hour, I'll be serving as discussion moderator. Before we get started, let me note that Partners for Progressive Israel is an American nonprofit 501c3 organization that's dedicated to the achievement of a durable and just peace between Israel and its neighbors, and believes in the need to ensure civil rights, equality, and social justice for all of Israel's inhabitants. Partners seeks to deepen American Jews' understanding of Israel's complexities in order to enhance their ability to advocate for a progressive Israeli future. So it's my honor today to introduce our two panelists. You saw longer versions of their bios as you registered, so I'll just speak very briefly. Zahava Galon has devoted her life to the struggle for human rights, women's rights, minority rights, to peace, and for a pluralistic and open Israeli democracy. She was the founding and first executive director of the human rights NGO B'Tselem, and she was in the Knesset for 16 years as with the Meretz Party, 6 of them as the Meretz chairperson. She has received innumerable honors. And Avital Brown is an active member of Women Wage Peace since the early days of this extraordinary organization. And you'll hear more about Women Wage Peace. And she's been involved in so many of the most important initiatives. And she also is the co-founder of Positeam Consulting and Training, which focuses on capacity building programs for Palestinian high-tech companies. So thank you so much to both of you for being here today, and it's such an honor to be on this conversation with you. So just to clarify that the discussion amongst us is going to go on for about 40 minutes. And then after we finish our conversation, we're going to open it up to questions from the video audience. If you're participating via Zoom, you'll be able to ask questions. If you're on the phone, hopefully your questions will be asked by other people. You can type your questions at any time as they occur to you. All you need to do is look at the bottom of your monitor. You might need to run your mouse over it, and you'll see an icon that reads Q&A. And if you click on that icon and type your question into the small box that appears, it will get logged there. And the webinar will not be interrupted or disrupted. And please know that those of you who are listening or viewing, your microphones are turned off. So if you have a question to ask, it's only by typing that you'll be able to ask them. So let's get started. Again, such a blessing to be with both of you. And I'd like to ask, if you would, to take a few minutes and talk about how you come to be here. What is it that the passions and the story that animates you to do the work that you are doing? And you know, what is the most important thing for us to know about you? Avital, would you be comfortable starting?
Sure. Okay, so I'm here as Women Wage Peace, and as some of you might know or not, it's the largest grassroots peace movement now in Israel. We started 4 years ago after the last war in Gaza, and what brought me there, because I have my day job, we all volunteer at Women Wage Peace. What brought me there is that during the during this war, I had 2 sons in Gaza and a son-in-law in Gaza. And, you know, they came back and say, you know what, we got in, we got out. Thank God they got out healthy, but we don't understand why and what's the purpose. And then I said, you know what, Khalas, enough is enough. We have to stop this madness. And luckily, I was not the only one that thought it. And I heard that there were like a group of women that decided to start a women movement and to come and demand that, you know, let's talk about peace and security from the women perspective, and let's stop this. And they call whoever wants to be there to go on a train, wear white, wear turquoise scarf, and here I am in my other life since then. It's been 4 years now. We thought that we will get the peace in 4 years and go home back, but apparently it's a bit more work to do, and we are there to go until we reach an agreement with the Palestinians.
And you feel called, it's a very flat, there's no hierarchy, it's a very flat grassroots organization.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you feel called to be part of the leadership of it, yeah? Yes?
We at the beginning, we introduced ourselves as leaderless, and then someone told us, no, it's leaderful. Okay, we are really 4,000 people, women and men, by the way. Men can register to the movement as long as they accept that women are leading it. We are more than 2,000 really people like me active that are volunteering from few hours to few days a week. So we don't have a hierarchy. We have a steering committee that we elect once a year, that they sort of look over what's going on. We're working in teams, in professional teams and teams around the country. And it's very important for me to say that we make decisions by consensus, by soft consensus, like women do. We don't vote because the inclusivity in Women Wage Peace is the most important thing. We are a peace movement that consists of women from the right wing, from the left wing, young women, old women from Tel Aviv, from the periphery, Arab, Bedouin, Druze, Jews, you name it. And it's not like if you are the majority, your voice is accepted. It's we have to listen to all the voices, and if there is an agreement, a decision that really bothers someone, and she said, I have a deep objection, then we stop and we work through it. Not easy, but it's done.
I'd love to return to that, but I want to first to give an opportunity for Zahava to speak and to talk about your story.
Thanks a lot. And I must say that from my point of view, peace is the most feminist issue. You know, the ability to compromise is the most feminist issue. So I'm very active, you know, in the general battle to achieve peace for many, many years, And people asked me, you know, just recently I was asked, how come that for so many years you are still in the struggle, you know? So I'm an optimist. I don't care, you know. I think that I'm in the business, I don't know, more than 30 years, you know. We established B'Tselem, it was in 88, the end of 88. And I was sure that after 4 or 5 years, after monitoring the human rights violations in the territories, the human rights violation of the Palestinians' human rights violations, so we should close, we would close B'Tselem and we'll have peace. And okay, 30 years, you know, it's a long time, but I don't care. That's why I really fascinated by the work of Women Wage Peace, because it gives, you know, a kind of a hope that still are people, you know, and it's so hard these days in Israel to be labeled as a traitor and as Israeli hater, you know, when you talk about peace, people, most of the people in Israel, they said, come on, with whom are you going to have peace? So I feel so optimistic to hear Avital and to know that there are so great women that are involved, you know, in the struggle for peace and they don't give up. So this is one thing. As I said, peace is a feminist issue. I'm a feminist. I used to fight and to struggle for many, many issues, for women's rights, for battered women, trafficked women, abused women, about the issues like being represented in the parliament. You know, my party, the Meretz Party, I think is the most feminist party, no doubt of that. Not only because the number of women in our list, but because of the issues that we are promoting and trying to advance. And I see the struggle for women's rights as part of the general struggle for human rights. And now after leaving the Knesset and leaving Meretz, you know, being the head of Meretz. So I thought that my most important role these days is to bring back the discourse, the human rights discourse, to the table, to expand the discourse, to, you know, to make it more flexible, to allow people to understand that when I talk about Israeli Arabs' rights, or asylum seekers' rights, or women's rights, or Palestinians' rights, we talk about human rights. And this is very important these days when, you know, we have two kinds of visions for Israel. Those who believe that Israel should be a liberal, democratic state, and those who think that Israel, well, I think that they don't think so, but I think that they think that Israel is a fascist state. So I believe
we say ethno-nationalist. You know, that's the language that we tend to say.
Ethno-nationalist state. Okay, so I believe that these days, because we have this struggle between those two visions, my role or our role, the liberal camp role is to, I would say, to reestablish maybe and to expand the human rights discourse, to talk about it, to bring people to understand why it's so important to talk about human rights in general. And this is what I'm going to do these days.
Thank you, both of you. I mean, you're both putting forward, you know, this expansive and inclusive vision, and I think one of the things I want to ask you about is, you know, where it's resonating. Avital, you said Women Wage Peace is the largest grassroots organization in Israel, and where it's being shut down, and strategies for, you know, what you think the strategies you're going to follow to try to achieve your goals. You both said that you thought when you started in your work, you thought it would be short, and it's clearly it's a marathon. So what the you know, what the next steps in the marathon are? Is that I think there's clear questions.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the sprint became a marathon. You're right.
Yeah.
So these days I'm in the strategic committee, and this day we are starting now to tell the story of the change. Okay, what will happen 4 years from now, and therefore we're taking it back. What do we need to do? So, like Zahava said, the idea is to bring the discourse, because the word peace, unfortunately, in the last years became only popular in prayers by the religious people. They say it a few times a day, but that's it. But if I go in the street and I say, I'm from Women Wage Peace, there's some people that they hear the word peace, oh, you're against the soldiers and you're against Israel. And so what we're doing now is we're changing, we are bringing it to the discourse. That's why we are opening, you know, where I think that I have spent more time in the tent in the last 4 years than all my life. And yet we are building another women's, we call it Mother's Tent tonight, and we're opening it. It's going to be until the election day in Kikar Rabin, in Tel Aviv. And we will invite people to talk about what is peace and security for them, because that's what we decided, that we will not succeed if we will stay a small, a very homogeneous kind of movement. If we are not going to get the Likud women and the religious women with us, understanding that we have a common need. And I just want to illustrate it, and again, coming back for Women's Day, that we're women, is that when I sat, first time, I found myself talking to a religious women, like the national religions that live in settlements, you know, with all the descriptions that you might have in your head now. She has 5 boys, and then she looked at me and she said, "What do you think? I don't want peace." She said to me in her language, every time I bring another one of my son to the Bakum, it's the place when you are enlisted to the army, every time I feel like the Akedat Yitzchak. I don't know how to say it in English.
The Binding of Isaac, the story from the book of Genesis, of Isaac, yeah.
I looked at her and I said, bingo, so this is what we have in common. So before we talk about, is it occupation, is it our land, is it their land, is it this, is it that, who is right, we are women and we want our children to have a better future. And by the way, when Women OH Peace were meeting Palestinian women, it's the same thing, you know, the first kind, the blaming and the shaming, you took it, I have this, the roadmap, blah, blah, blah. And in 2 seconds, it turns out she wants her son to become a doctor and be safe. And that's what I want. And then I said, we have a common thing. So we have to bring it to the public. And the way we do it in Women OH Peace is any way we can. So there are women that like the dancing and the craft, and there are women that like the academic, listening about UN Resolution 1325. And then we found out that when we come to them as women rights from the resolution, it's easier for us to get women that they would not open the window to hear about peace, and you know they will start immediately, but we have no partner, blah blah blah. But we said, look, we're women. What is security for you? Do you feel that people do not count you in the decision-making table? Do you want your voice to be sound? And we come from there. So our strategy is really to go to as many diverse population of women that we can, because only together we can then go to the decision maker. That's on one hand. The other one, we go into the decision makers and we tell them, look, she's from the Likud and she wants peace, and she's from there and she wants peace. And that confuses them because we are breaking the dichotomy of peace and security. So that's our strategy, if you can call this chaos strategy.
It's great. It's great. Zahava, do you want to speak?
Yes, of course. I want to say that I have the feeling that our camp, needs to rebuild or to dictate our new narrative. What does it mean, our new narrative? We believe, first of all, that there is a need for ending the occupation, even before having peace. Ending the occupation. I can't stand all the ideas of the right wing saying that now they are not talking about two-state solutions anymore. You know, they're talking about annexation, and we will find ourselves in a situation that we will have an apartheid state. That's what's going to be, because they want to annex more and more and more. This is the right wing, and the Israeli government used, I don't know who is going to be the next. I know who I want to be the next prime minister. I'm not prime minister. I don't know if it's going to be, but all the last governments, they were captured by the extreme right wing, that they want to annex their territories. So I think that there is a need to say we have to stop the occupation, to end the occupation. It harms, of course, the Palestinians. They are the first victims, but we are Israelis, we are victims too because of the occupation, because in order to have such an oppression, in order to oppress the people in the territories, you need to shut down all those, or to shut down all those who criticize, the Israeli policy towards the occupation and towards the settlements. So you can see how it goes on the ground, what's going on the ground. So the Israeli government, on one hand, they are not allowing the Palestinians, freedom of movement. They are not allowing them anything, especially these days that we are very scared about the escalation in the situation now in the Temple Mount and in Gaza, So in order to control this, they have to fight against the gatekeepers, against free media, against human rights organizations. So we are, although we are not the direct victims of the occupation, but we are in Israel, our society is in a new situation. And what I think that our camp, the liberal camp, the leftists, I am talking about the leftists because I belong to Meretz, we need to dictate our agenda. We have to say, okay, what we are going to do in the five coming years, in the coming decades, what are the issues, what are the topics that we want to fight? Why don't we have a Bill of Rights? Why don't we have a Bill of freedom from religion and freedom of religion? Why don't we have a Bill of social rights? So we have to take all those rights together and to say, human right is human right, and we can't separate them. So Palestinians' rights are important as Israelis' rights, and we don't want to control them, and we want to have equality. We want that people will feel that they have their rights, and now it's not the situation. So only one issue, I must say, I like very much the idea of having Avital's group, all those women, Personally, I must admit, I don't know how we are going to agree with settlers and others, and how they're going to agree and to understand that if we want to stop the occupation, we should have to evacuate some of the settlers, or I'm not talking about the settlements that are in the blocks, but some of the settlements, some of the settlers. So it's an issue, it's an issue. So I like the idea that they are going to discuss with them about those issues, because there are major issues. But from my point of view, I think that we should be very sharp on that, and we should say, no matter what, although we're under an organized attack, no matter what, that we should stop the occupation. It's our role as women, as feminist women, to see all women in the area, and to say, this is our role, this is our mission.
I'm so fascinated that both of you are in agreement that rhetoric, that the language is essential, whether it's the precise term like that shalom would be, is code word. I'm fascinated on so many levels. It's an interest of mine. One of the things I spend a lot of time thinking about is how to help American Jews, many of whom have very little Hebrew, be in deep relationship with Israel when the language is so such an important window into really understanding. But the interesting thing is that the one word that almost every American Jew knows, and many non-Jews, is shalom, and they and it's not a code word for against soldiers, or and so both, whether it's to rehabilitate one word or the larger rhetoric of human rights, which is so frequently rejected by Orthodox Jews as a Western encroachment, oppositional. So, that intersection between words and thoughts, and then facts on the ground, and how it plays out in policy decisions we make and actions and implications for people in their lives. Oh.
Maybe I can add something. I want to tell you something, to share with you something. You know, I used to be the head of Meretz, and we wanted many voters, you know, and it was very hard to get many voters. So I was consulted with some, you know, with some people, and they told me, forget about Shalom. Don't say Shalom anymore. Don't talk about Shalom anymore. Why won't you be, you know, why want to be more delicate, you know, why want you talk about an agreement? There is a need to reach an agreement. I said, there is a need to reach an agreement, but my agreement is peace, shalom. You know, I don't care. Maybe I will stay there, I don't know, the only one in town that will say shalom, I still say shalom, you know, although it's not a popular word at all. You know. Yeah. And you are right, human rights is considered as an international word, you know, something that, what about human rights? We have the Jews' rights and we don't care anymore. So I agree, I don't care about it. I'm not trying to be nice, you know.
And we are trying to be nice at Women Wage Peace. And the words, as you said, the words are really important. And you know what? It took us time to sit with our Palestinian friends and tell them, look, we are not saying occupation. And why aren't we saying occupation? Because if you go by international law, it is occupation by international law, right? But when I speak to my friend from one of the settlements who is in Women Wage Peace, and she tells me, look, all the people around me, you will never get them to agree that there is occupation of the land, because God had given us the land, and this is the narrative, and you are not going to change it. But you can talk about the occupation of the people, that the people have to have rights, and because of that, we may have to have concession. So everyone sees it when we decided, and we spoke to the Palestinian women, and we told them, look, if we're going, stop the occupation, we are going to drive away a good chunk of people that really believe that there should be a solution. And, you know, we're talking about stories before. I went to Ariel. Ariel is a settlement, but Zava, can we say a settlement in the consensus that Ariel will stay even, Ariel is a big city now. Yeah. Anyway, Women Wage Peace got to Ariel, okay? And we had a whole group of women from there, and we talked about and we explained, and we show a movie. By the way, we showed a movie about the women of Liberia and their struggle and how they ended the war there. And at the end, there was one young lady, beautiful one, her name, I even remember, Yael, stood up, religious, you know, with all the, and she said, what you did today is put question mark in places that all my life I lived with exclamation marks.
Wow.
And I said, I've made my day. I mean, she's made my day. I've made my, I earned my day. Yeah. And you know what? It took her a year, and I now heard that she's joined Women Wage Peace. Wow. And she is trying to bring it to her friends. And what does she tell us? I tell them, no, these are not the women of, okay? And I don't feel good about it, because as we don't want to exclude anyone, I don't want to exclude people that are struggling and openly struggling for human rights. But if I can get to 100 women in Ariel now, because they understand that they and we, Women Wage Peace, want the same thing, now let's think of the way of getting it. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's important for me to say, because Zava, I've been following you, watching you, adore you, and the work that you do for human rights. But it's very important for me as Women Wage Peace to distinguish ourselves as a non-political grassroots movement, okay? Very inclusive. And we are, believe me, we're paying prices for it internally. Because we have to take care of the Arab women that with us, that after this last national law, how do you call it? The national law, they went down. They say
we say nation state law. So.
Nation state.
Yeah. They were devastated. They were devastated. And we were thinking, what do we do not to lose them? okay? And then we decided to put in our agenda that we are for equality, which we didn't have before, because for us it was, we're doing it. We don't have to talk about it. So we put it. So on one hand, we have the Arab citizens of Israel in the movement. On the other hand, we have the women from the right, and we're not going to give up on any of them, and we're not going to teach or to convince or to educate. We're just going to find the common denominator that will make both of us go to our leaders and say, that's what we want. And just one more sentence. Last week, I was standing in intersection all around the country every Friday now. So someone was opening, I was standing in an intersection, a driver opened the window and screamed to me, Rak Bibi, only Bibi. And I said, you're right. Maybe Rak Bibi can bring us peace. That's fine. That's fine with me, you know? And he was like, so you're not against Bibi? So you're not standing there to change the government? I said, doesn't mean what I want is a political agreement. Whoever's going to make it, that's great. So it's very important for me to distinguish that's the way we're going, and it's not easy. For some of us, it's very difficult, but we believe that this is a theory of change.
It's so I want to just pause and to address our listeners and our viewers. We're going to be talking for just about 7 or 8 more minutes, and then we're going to open it up for your questions. So please type in questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. And listening to the two of you, it seems very clear that focusing in on your time with Meretz, Zahava, like that, where Meretz is about really articulating clearly, precisely, powerfully the values and the principles and the actions, and that, you know, it's going to appeal, and that you hope, I with you hope that it would have mass appeal and it had a more narrow appeal, versus the much more grassroots trying to shift the culture. I was trying to come up with the language that it's kind of, because you described, Avital, Women Who Wage Peace as non-political, but you have a political end, but you're kind of using extra political means to get, you're not limiting yourself to the political structures in order to achieve those.
Yeah. I meant that we're not affiliated with any political party. We have a political agenda for sure. Yeah.
Well, maybe I can say, maybe I can add something. First of all, I'm against Bibi. No doubt of that. I want to be very clear about that. And I don't believe, I mean it, I don't believe that there is any chance that under a Bibi primacy, we would have any kind of peace. Bibi wants only to survive. I'm not talking about his issues, you know, criminal issues. I'm not talking about that. He wants to survive. He doesn't care about the Palestinians. He doesn't care about anything. He's looking at the right wing and he's trying to get their voters. So he has to compete with Naftali Bennett, Lieberman, so many leaders in there. And now we have, you know, I don't know how to translate it in English, Otzma Yehudit, the Jewish, what's their name, all the unbearable people there, all the extremist people
we
there.
don't, I mean, no one has really tried to translate it into English, but in the Jewish press, we're talking about the Kahanists. So.
The Kahanists, exactly. So now we have the Kahanists, and I can't stand it, I must admit, and I'm really very frightened that we have now the Kahanists in the parliament again, and we'll have all the right-wingers there, and everything is going to change. What we knew is not going to be, you know, what we used. And what we used to, it was really terrible enough, but now we are going to face a new phase, you know, of the situation. So, and really I adore Avital's work because I think it's great because we didn't succeed yet. we didn't succeed yet. Maybe there is a need for a new approach, for a different approach, you know, to approach people from different levels, from different areas, Jews and Arabs, and maybe even the settlers. I don't know. And it's fine from my point of view. I must admit, I'm a political person. I used to be so many years in politics. So, and I believe this is my personality. I'm very sharp. I want to say things as they are. We are occupying the land and the people. We're not only occupying the people. So, but it's okay. There is a place for different, you know, angles. So it's okay. So what I want to add, and maybe to tell you something, I know Palestinians. I used to work or to cooperate with Palestinians for many, many, many years. And what I'm so frustrated now that the Palestinians, they don't believe anymore that there is a chance to do something. And they're so frustrated, you know, they don't see any hope. The whole problem is Gaza and the West Bank and Abu Mazen and who is going to replace Abu Mazen. There's so many political issues. And they're frustrated also to see the people in Israel. Most of the people in Israel, they don't care anymore, you know. I'm not talking about women, you know, Avital's groups, but most of the people in Israel, life are so convenient. We have the fence. They don't meet with Palestinians anymore. They don't see Palestinians. They don't care, you know. The terror is almost bearable, you know, once in a while. It's terrible to say that, but from their point of view. So Palestinians are very frustrated, and I think there is a need to rebuild the trust, to say that there are people in Israel, that they believe in peace, the world peace, that they believe in an agreement, that they believe in, you know, in speaking loudly for their values, you know, for our values that are the fundamental values that Israel was built upon, you know. So how we are going to convince people that now we are in kind of an emergency situation, emergency period, that if we don't come to a kind of an agreement, I don't know what's going to be here in the coming decade. So I think this is now the mission in the liberal camp or in the leftist camp. And you know, people, life is very convenient in Israel, I must say.
Yeah, and comfortable too. I think, yeah. I want to again say to our listeners, you have an opportunity to write in questions using the question and answer function. We don't have any questions at this point, so I'm going to actually introduce a new topic, which I wouldn't necessarily do at this time, and I'll keep monitoring to see if questions come in. And I just want to ask you to reflect a little bit on the, you know, on religious pluralism and how it plays out on this conversation. Avital's talked a little bit about how, in an effort to reach out to a lot of different constituencies, and where you've broken through, but ways that, you know, ways that religion is helpful, ways that religion. And I guess, you know, I'm just sitting in suburban Philadelphia where there's just a strict separation of church and state. So I think about religion as kind of additive and a resource for helping. You know, I talk all the time about that I am Jewish because it helps me to be the best possible human being, not necessarily to be the best possible Jew. And where and in Israel, where Judaism is married to state power, so there is authority and sometimes autocracy attached to it. So your reflections, I guess, whether you want to keep the conversation focused on the peace conversation, or if we want to flip over in this last little bit to reflect more on the gender issue, and as women, how religion plays out. If you'd like to speak to that broad topic.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, Zava, why don't you? Avital, you've taken the lead earlier.
Yes. Well, I must say that I can't stand the power of the rabbinical courts in Israel. I can't stand the idea that we are forced to behave according to laws that were formulated, I think, 3,000 years ago, you know. And the status of women in Israel, because of the system, because of the halakha system, brings women in a terrible situation where there is no choice of freedom. Someone that wants to marry in Israel, he should marry in halakha system according to the Orthodox system. Why? And I am not against it, but I don't understand why we don't have a civil marriage. You know, why? So I think that there is a need, I believe there is a need to separate religion from state, but unfortunately I don't have many people that they will support, you know, to separate religions from state. But there is many people in Israel these days that they believe that there is a need for civil marriage, in Israel. And more people, you know, how do you say it in English? They vote with their toes, with their feet.
With their feet, they vote with their feet. Yeah, so they go to Cyprus for weddings.
Exactly, for Cyprus. Oh, they make civil marriage in Israel, although it is not recognized. So and the problem is that all the coalitions in the last years in Israel, they are the Haredim, the Haredim parties. They are part of the coalition. So you can't do anything. So you can't change the system. So we try to legislate many bills in order, you know, to improve the system. But as long as we'll have the Haredi parties in the coalition, in the government, as long as we won't separate the religion from state, it will be very hard, especially for women in Israel that are, from my point of view, suffered from this situation.
Avital, before you answer, I'll say that I'm part of a group in the States called the Jewish Religious Equality Coalition, and it's convened by the American Jewish Committee. And we're looking to promote religious pluralism. And, you know, for a lot of American Jews, the shiny issue, the most important issue might be the Kotel. But we really want to work in coalition with Israeli groups, and we hear very clearly that for Israelis on the ground, the Kotel, it's a symbol, but it doesn't really resonate with them. But it is exactly what you were talking about. Marriage equality is in America, marriage equality is talking about same-sex marriage, but in Israel, marriage equality, we're talking about the civil marriage that you're talking about, and trying to both lobby where appropriate and to educate American Jews on this topic as well. Avital, do you want to speak to this question?
I don't want to touch on the politics of it, but just, you know, being, as Ava said, optimistic and looking at we see today a lot of religious women. Now I'm talking about, again, the Haredi women that are getting, I see them in the high tech, this is where my scenery, they get to work in the high tech. They are starting, there was recently a movement of, I cannot be elected, so I don't vote. Like, לא נבחרת, לא בוחרת. So I see that it comes even from the Haredi women themselves, that because of course, as Ava said, you know, I'm looking at it from the Knesset. I want equality, I want women in the Knesset. So right away, with all the Haredi party, there are no women. So I start with non-equal half and half. So of course we think that in all aspects there should be an equal representation of women. And I think that this is one thing that the women there are also starting to raise. So I'm saying there is hope.
Yeah. So I anticipated one of our questions. After I asked the question, a couple of questions came in, and one person asked, this is the first part I think we discussed, how worried should we be by the growing Orthodox influence in Israel, and especially in terms of what it means for women? And that's what we've been discussing. The second part of this person's question, they didn't register, I don't know their name, is how close is Israel to becoming another Iran or Saudi Arabia? So, I mean, Avital, it seems like you're suggesting no, because because of awareness and activism from within those sectors by women themselves.
I hope. I mean, I don't know, but I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. I think that those women that Avital spoke about them, they're great, really. It's not obvious that women in such communities, you know, will start fighting, but they're they're a small group, although it's a start, you know. Most women in Israel are still the control of the rabbinate, the Orthodox rabbinate. Most women in Israel are not allowed, especially the Haredim women, the Haredis women, they are not allowed to do what they want, you know. And as long as we don't have freedom of, you know, freedom of choice, how we can, you know, it's from my point of view, it's, you know, it's unbelievable that still these days in Israel, we have to fight that we can marry as we want, you know. How come, you know, how come? So I'm not sure that we're going to be Iran, you know, and not Arab, Arab Saudi, not Saudi, but, you know, but still there is a work to do. Still there is a work to do.
Much. So there are two questions, and one is a very precise political question for Zahava, and then I'll ask the other one to kind of wind us down, I think. This person, I know his name, Michael Farrell, asks me to ask Zahava if you think that Avi Gabai's recent turn toward the peace issue will hurt Meritz's support in the election, even though Meretz is the party that has shown an unwavering commitment to peace regardless of the polls.
Well, it's very hard for me to talk about Avi Gabai. Maybe not, you know. Avi Gabai, I think at the beginning, he thought that it's not important to talk about peace, you know. He thought that he would focus on internal issues, civil justice, you know, things, solidarity, and there are very important issues, but Israel, and you can't be the head of a party that you don't talk about peace or peace agreement. So now he started, I heard him saying something, but I think that the people in Israel, that they really care about peace, of course, Meretz is their party, you know, and no doubt of that, yes. Meretz is not going, no one from Meretz is going to be the prime minister. So if it would be, so it would be a paradise, you know. So, but meanwhile, I think we have a problem with Avi Gabai, and if, you know, the Labour Party, I'm very disappointed because they don't speak about the need to have peace. They don't speak about the occupation. They don't care about it. Yeah. They don't care about it. They don't protect. Maybe I can add something. They don't protect the organizations that they work against the occupation, like Breaking the Silence, B'Tselem, and others. So the only party that protect them is Meretz, because they're understanding that this is the role of the civil society, you know. But I don't know what Avi Gabai.
Okay. Another question came in and we have time for it, so I'm rearranging my own queue a little bit. Someone asks, it starts with a question to Avital and about the tent. Do women's rights come into the tent? And the precise question is about issues such as violence against women is in the public eye, especially with the rally across the country to protest the plague of violence against women. And so then to both of you, what do you both think, what do you both do about this issue? So a little bit to Avital about what happens in the tent, and then to both of you about violence against women.
Okay, so basically this time the tent is going to promote a bill that Women Wage Peace, a law that we want to be passed. We called it Political Alternative First. We managed to have people, a member of Knesset from most parties support it, including the Likud. So we want to promote it because, again, it's another way of saying if we're going to pursue peace, to seek for alternatives, then probably there's not going to be war. Now, the tent itself is a place that we invite everyone, all the parties, everyone to talk. So if there is a woman there that wants to talk about women, violence against women, we are listening. And we are tying it to the fact that research shows that when a society is in violence, then domestic violence is more probable to occur. And then we're saying, yes, we at Women Wage Peace, we're focused on one thing, but we believe that if we are going to have a peace agreement, then the violence will go down. There will be more budget for education. So we are listening to everyone and we tie it because it is tied. Research shows that it's connected, all connected.
No doubt that everything is connected. But what is amazing that really in the last 3 decades, Israel made such a progress for protecting women, you know, for educating women. And we have legislated so many bills for the equality for women, you know, and still women are murdered, are raped, are trafficked, are exploited because they are women, you know, because they are gender. So it's amazing, you know, the estimation is that we have in Israel around 200,000 women that are battered women, you know, that are battered women. Women were murdered, more than 20 women were murdered only this year, you know, in the last year. So we tried in the parliament, personally, I've legislated so many bills for battered women, raped women, abused women, but it's not enough. And I agree with Avital, I think that everything is connected. We are occupying the territories, our kids are going to serve as soldiers there, you know, they have to confront with the local population, with the Palestinians. So it influences the whole situations, and then they come back to Israel, and they, you know, they are violent. So, okay, we should have peace.
Yeah, yeah. I am monitoring both the chat function as well as the question and answer function, and I see there's a question from Gerald Jarash to ask, how important is it to you that the center left win the election? Is the highest priority to work to defeat Bibi, or is it something else? Is it something less than that?
Well, the priority is to defeat Bibi, no doubt of that. To kick him out, away. Enough is enough.
Like
no
that,
doubt
yeah. Vital, you don't have to answer.
I keep my right to remain silent as Women Wage Peace.
I had a feeling you might want to keep this one. As Zahava claimed proudly that she was a political animal, and so I...
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 more questions. In celebration of International Women's Day, this is anonymous, I wish I could name the person. In celebration of International Women's Day, it's inspirational to hear your stories.
Mm-hmm.
You both have a common goal for shalom. Is there a way that you can take the grassroots efforts and the all-inclusive approach that you take, Avital, with the more political, matter-of-fact approach that Zahava, you take, and work together to reach the common goal of peace? And then an additional question, as women, what's your unique role in that work?
Okay, I think you can separate, you know, the struggle of people, or women, especially in the grassroots, with the need to influence decision makers, because in the end of the day, the decision makers have to feel that there are people, many people that backing them, that demanding from them to have peace, you know. So there is a kind of a combination. So that's why I think that the group that Avital is part of, you know, Women Wage Peace, why their role is so important, their role and others' role, you know, and we don't have to agree with everything, you know, because we have different visions, but what is important to bring together their efforts with the political effort in order to help the government to decide that they are moving toward peace, but it will be only after the elections, of course. Of course.
I can add that if I understood the question correctly, that I think it's happening. If you look at Kahol Lavan Party, there are people there that their common denominator or what they want brought them together, even though they are from the classic right and left. There are people from two sides there, and they're sitting together because they found something common that they want to pursue. Okay, so I think it's sort of showing that our theory of change could work, because I don't believe that in one day you can turn the people that are thinking the right or our right and there's no partner. I don't think you can just shift their idea now to pursue peace and evacuate the land. Okay, but I think that you can show them that if we have a greater cause, then we can work together to get that greater cause. I hope I answered the question. But we see it in parties now that are forming. You saw it. I'm so disappointed that Dina, what's her family name? Dina Bar Shalom had a beautiful party with women, religious and non-religious, and from all. They decided not to run because they, because of
I want to add something. I agree that Avital's group, they have a bigger cause. The only cause that I can find in the Kahol Lavan, what's the name? Blue and White Party. What's their name?
Yeah.
No. Blue and White Party. The only cause that they have is to kick out Bibi from his position. I don't see any way that they would agree about anything, about the territories, about the state solution, about anything, because they have rightist people there and leftist people there. I don't believe in that, but now they have a mission to kick Bibi. Okay, fine, take this mission, no problem.
We talk a lot about that in many quarters about it. So it's so much easier to be opposed to something than to actually stand for something. It's the different dynamics get set into motion, different energy gets released. So, so the last question, I think it's a lovely question, a great way to end, is that someone, and another anonymous person asks, what is your message to women worldwide on the occasion of International Women's Day?
Easy. We can do it. Peace, and what I'm saying, peace is possible. It was done by women in Northern Ireland. It was done by the women of Liberia, and there are other examples, and we can do it, and we need all the support of all the women of the world.
I believe that we don't have they don't have the privilege to sit at home doing nothing. They should do something. I don't care what, but they should, from my point of view, of course, join the efforts to peace, to promote peace. But I don't think that women have the privilege, not to do something in order to change the society, our society, because otherwise, I don't want to think about it.
Thanks so much, Rav Todot, to both of you. What a wonderful conversation. It's a blessing to me, and I'm sure to all of the listeners. Thank you so much, and Chizkuvi and Sue, keep going. Much strength, much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your support.
Absolutely, 100%. So, okay.
Thanks a lot.
I think I may have some closing remarks. It's time to bring the conversation to an end. Thank you for joining us for this conversation with Israel and Palestine. So again, I want to thank Zahava Galon and Avital Brown, and also to thank very much the staff of Partners for Progressive Israel for their work in making this discussion happen. And all of you who are listening, you can go to progressiveisrael.org. That's one word, progressiveisrael.org, to learn more about Partners for Progressive Israel and future programs. So thanks to everyone. Happy International Women's Day, and Litraot.
Okay, bye, Litraot.
Bye, Litraot.